Ever imagine yourself as like um, the guardian against, an invisible force? Not like fighting ghosts or anything, though. Think more like uh, protecting people from something you can't even see or smell or even taste. Radiation.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, you heard that right. You've been checking out RoleCatcher. It's a career development platform, particularly their insights on what it takes to become get this, a radiation protection officer. So get ready, because we're diving deep into this whole career path using using their intel as our guide.
Role catchers, I'll be honest, it's a bit of an unexpected source to be using for all this, but they've actually got a surprising amount of, info on this whole field. Like, seriously, tucked away in their career guides, FAQs.
It's true. And their whole, tech-focused approach, it might actually give us a pretty unique angle on all this. So first things first, what does a radiation protection officer even do?
Okay, so imagine, right? Imagine being the person who's actually responsible for, like, making sure that radiation, which, let's be real, it has the potential to be really harmful, is used safely.
Of course,
And we're talking everywhere, whether it's in a power plant, a hospital,
Right.
or a research lab. That's that's the heart of it, protecting people, but also like the environment from all the harmful effects of ionizing radiation.
So we're basically talking about like what developing those safety protocols, monitoring those radiation levels, uh, making sure, I don't know, everything is up to code, that kind of thing.
Exactly. They're the ones actually developing those like customized radiation protection plans,
I see.
particularly for places like, nuclear power plants where, let's face it, the stakes are just unbelievably high.
Oh, for sure. I bet when most people, when they hear like radiation protection officer, they just immediately picture those like massive nuclear power plants.
Right.
But you mentioned hospitals, labs too.
Yeah.
What else is out there?
Honestly, it's a way wider field than you might think. Aside from like the power plants, which, yeah, obviously hospitals are a big one. Think about it, X-ray departments, cancer treatment centers,
Oh, wow.
even research labs working with like radioactive materials.
That's a lot.
They all need someone like right there ensuring that everything is, radiation safe.
So 1 minute you could be in an office just like, I don't know, analyzing data, and then the next, boom, you're on site in a potentially, hazardous location.
Totally.
Talk about variety.
Exactly. And that's something RoleCatcher really emphasizes, this whole idea of the diversity of work environments. This career isn't just for, the stereotypical lab coats. This is for people who can like adapt to all these different settings, offices, labs, even on-site work in, let's be real, potentially risky locations.
Yeah, that's a good point. That range of environments, I feel like it probably attracts people who like a little, I don't know, unpredictability, like
Yeah.
a little spice in their workday.
100%. And speaking of attracting the right people, I think RoleCatcher does a really good job of like laying out the pros and cons of this whole career path, which, let's be real, is essential if you're thinking about this as, as a career.
Right, because every job has its, its perks and its downsides.
Totally.
So let's get real for a second. What are the, I don't know, like the rewards of going down this path? And what are like the potential drawbacks? What are we really talking about here?
Okay, so RoleCatcher, maybe not surprisingly, highlights job security as like a major advantage.
That makes sense.
Which, makes sense with like everyone's growing concerns about radiation and, just regulations getting tighter and tighter all the time. The need for skilled radiation protection officers is not going away like anytime soon.
And we know from their whole industry trends section, this is only going to get more important, right?
Yeah.
As technology, keeps advancing.
Right.
So job security, check, check, check.
Check.
But what about the other side of that? The risks.
Okay, well, you're dealing with radiation. So, like, the source material, it doesn't shy away from, the potential hazards here.
Sure.
While there are, really strict safety protocols in place, there's always that risk of exposure. That's why, like, protective gear and just meticulous training, that's just, like, paramount in this field. It's so important.
So you're potentially, like, facing a hazard that you can't see, can't smell.
Right.
Which, that's going to add, like, a whole other layer of, I don't know, mental and emotional, I don't know, weight to the job.
Oh, absolutely. And RoleCatcher, they pick up on that too. They mention like the really high level of responsibility and accountability that just like comes with this role. A single mistake could have like serious consequences.
Yeah.
And, that's not something that everyone is like cut out for.
It's a good point. It's not just about protecting yourself. You're responsible for like the well-being of what, potentially hundreds,
Right.
thousands of people.
Thousands, yeah.
That's a lot of pressure.
And it's not a 9 to 5 job either. Like the pros and cons section on RoleCatcher, they mention that, irregular work hours are pretty likely. Being on call, responding to emergencies, it's demanding, no doubt.
Definitely not your average desk job. You got to be ready to jump into action at a moment's notice.
Oh yeah, exactly. And beyond even like the immediate demands of it all, the field itself is always evolving. Like always. New technologies, new regulations. I mean, continuous learning is it's non-negotiable if you actually want to stay ahead of the curve.
It's a career that keeps you on your toes.
Oh yeah.
Mentally and professionally, it sounds like.
Sure.
I'm curious about something, though. So RoleCatcher, they briefly mentioned this possibility of specializing within this field.
Yeah.
Do they give any specific examples or?
That's one area where they kind of stay a little tight-lipped. They mention, specialization as a potential path for sure, but they don't really dive into specific areas of focus for radiation protection officers.
Okay, so a bit of a mystery there. Maybe that's something you'll have to uncover on your own. It sounds like this field has more layers than meet the eye.
Right.
But let's back up for just a sec.
Okay.
How does one even become a radiation protection officer? Is
Right.
it all nuclear engineering degrees and just mountains of physics textbooks? Is that what we're talking about here?
You might be surprised to hear that it's actually not as narrow as you might think.
Okay.
While, yeah, nuclear engineering is definitely one route, RoleCatcher actually highlights honestly, a surprisingly diverse range of academic pathways into this whole career.
You've got my attention. What else is on the table?
Okay, so think health physics for starters.
Okay.
It's a field that's specifically focused on, radiation safety, so it's a natural fit for this kind of career. But then they also list environmental science, even straight up physics, chemistry, biology.
Well, wait, hold on. Biology.
Yeah.
That's not what I was expecting.
Right. But it makes sense when you actually think about it.
Yeah.
Understanding the effects of radiation on living organisms, that's crucial for actually, assessing and mitigating all those risks.
That's a really good point. And it highlights how interdisciplinary this field actually is. You're not just dealing with radiation in a vacuum. You're thinking about the impact on living things, on the environment. It's a whole picture kind of thing.
Exactly. And that brings us to something else that RoleCatcher really emphasizes, and it's their whole functions and core abilities section. While, yeah, obviously technical skills, those are crucial. They stress that interpersonal skills, those are just as vital for a radiation protection officer.
Hold on. Are you saying that being a people person is as important as, I don't know, knowing your physics equations in this line of work?
Yes.
A lab?
Okay, so imagine this. You're a radiation protection officer at a hospital, right? And there's been some kind of minor incident involving a radioactive source, maybe a piece of equipment, it malfunctioned, or there was a slight spill. Your technical expertise, that's what helps you actually assess and contain the situation, right? But you're now facing a whole room, right, full of people, colleagues, patients, and they're potentially pretty frightened.
Right, yeah.
And this is where all those communication skills, they become just as important as, all that fancy scientific knowledge you've got.
Okay, yeah, I can definitely see that.
You need to be able to reassure people,
Yeah.
right? Explain what happened, but in a way that actually makes sense to them,
Yeah.
And then make sure that everyone's actually following all the safety procedures, and this is a big one, you gotta stay calm.
Oh, yeah.
And collected yourself the whole time.
Right.
RoleCatcher, they actually highlight active listening, specifically as a core ability for this whole role. And it's right there alongside the technical skills, knowing your physics, because they know it's not just about having the answers.
Yeah.
You got to be able to actually get them across to people in a way that makes them feel, safe and informed.
That's a good point. In that kind of high pressure situation, trust is so important. And that comes from clear, empathetic communication. Because you're not just dealing with the radiation itself, you're dealing with people's, I don't know, perceptions of it.
Yeah, their anxieties about it.
Exactly. A good radiation protection officer, it's they're this bridge between, that technical world, all the sciencey stuff, and then just the everyday world, right?
Yeah.
They're translating all this complex information into something that everyone can understand and then, more importantly, actually act on.
So not just a job for the introverted science whizzes, then you need a bit of like a human touch too, a little bit.
I like it. Okay, so I'm curious about like career progression here.
Yeah.
So let's say someone's listening to this and they're like, radiation protection officer, that's me, that's what I want to do.
Yeah.
What can they actually expect, like, as they move up in this field?
Yeah.
Does RoleCatcher, do they give any, like, insights into that whole journey?
They do. They outline these different career stages from like, entry level where you're maybe like, assisting with those surveys, doing some monitoring, all the way up to becoming a principal officer
Okay.
who's actually like responsible for developing those long-term safety strategies for like entire facilities.
Wow, that's quite a jump.
It is.
What kind of skills or experience, I mean, to go from, like, collecting data to, I don't know, calling the shots on safety for, like, a whole nuclear power plant?
Well, I mean, experience is key, of course.
Sure.
Like, as you work your way up, you're not just gaining, like, the technical know-how. You're also building, like, a reputation, right? For reliability, for, like, problem-solving, sound judgment, all those things that really matter when you're the one responsible for radiation safety on a larger scale.
So it's a career where, like, your track record, your reputation, that really, like, matters.
Oh.
You're building trust. It's not just, I don't know, checking boxes on a list.
Right, exactly.
Okay.
And, I mean, leadership becomes a really big deal, too.
Yeah, that makes sense.
As you progress, you might be managing whole teams of other officers or, like, coordinating safety protocols across different departments or even, like, advising higher-ups on those, like, policy decisions related to radiation and all that.
So it's a career where, like, your influence kind of grows alongside your, like, expertise.
100%.
Okay, I like it.
Yeah.
Now let's talk about how RoleCatcher, our, like, unusual guide for this whole deep dive, can actually help you land a job in this field.
Right.
Because they've got all those, like, tech-focused features.
They do.
Do any of them actually give you, like, a leg up in what I imagine is a pretty competitive job market?
I think this is actually where their whole, like, tech savviness might give you an advantage.
Yeah.
They have this feature, it's called RoleCatcher.capture, which, yeah, I know it sounds a little, I don't know.
A little gimmicky.
A little gimmicky, yeah, but it's actually super handy.
Well, I'm all for handy, especially when it comes to, like, job hunting.
Right.
Tell me more.
Okay, so imagine, like, you're browsing those job boards. Right?
Oh, yeah.
LinkedIn, Indeed, company websites. It's like information overload.
The worst.
This feature, what it lets you do is you can save those jobs from all those different places, like directly into your RoleCatcher account. Keeps everything nice and organized.
No more bookmark chaos.
Exactly.
Lost applications.
Oh, no.
That's a win in my book.
Right. But it's not even just about organization. They also offer, get this, AI-powered skills analysis.
Oh, okay.
So you upload your resume, and their system actually, like, compares it to the requirements of the jobs that you're interested in.
Oh, wow.
And flags anything that's, missing, any gaps in your skills, your experience, all that.
So it's like having a brutally honest, but, like, super efficient career counselor.
Yes.
Just, like, telling you exactly what you need to work on.
Exactly.
To stand out.
And they even, like, suggest improvements to your resume to help you, like, tailor it to those specific jobs, which, let's be real, in a field this competitive, those first impressions, they really, really matter.
For sure.
Big time.
So instead of sending out, like, a generic application,
right,
you're, like, strategically targeting your skills to what that employer actually needs.
Exactly. That's smart.
And then if you find that, like, oh, you actually do need to brush up on some stuff.
Yeah.
They have this career compass feature,
yeah,
which helps you, like, explore all these different career paths and even suggest, like, courses you can take, certifications, even, like, volunteer experiences.
that can, like, boost your profile, all that.
It's like having a personalized roadmap for your whole career.
Totally.
I like it.
They've really tried to, like, anticipate those challenges of, the job hunt.
Yeah.
And then actually provide solutions, but, like, within their platform.
That's cool.
But let's move beyond, like, the job search for a second.
Okay.
And actually dive into, like, the day-to-day realities.
Yes, let's get into the nitty-gritty.
Okay.
Because I'm imagining it's not all, like, lab coats and Geiger counters all the time, right?
Yeah.
What are some, I don't know, like, specific tasks that a radiation protection officer, what are they actually doing on a like regular basis?
Okay, so one of their like core functions, at least according to RoleCatcher, is developing and implementing these things called radiation protection plans.
Okay, so we're talking like the rule book for radiation safety.
Yeah.
But like, what does that actually look like in practice?
Okay, so imagine it as like this detailed blueprint for safety, but, and this is key, it's tailored to that specific location.
Okay, so like a hospital's radiation protection plan is going to look different from like a nuclear power plant's plan.
Exactly, 100%.
Got it, got it.
Each plan would have things like, outlining the potential sources of radiation, obviously, but then like safe handling procedures, what kind of, protective gear everyone needs, emergency response protocols, even just like setting those limits for radiation exposure.
And I'm guessing those limits are like based on some pretty rigorous scientific research,
So, yeah.
regulatory standards.
Absolutely, yeah.
You don't want to be winging it when it comes to radiation safety.
No, not at all.
Okay, so we've got like the safety blueprint.
Right.
What about like risk assessment?
Yeah.
That sounds a little, I don't know, more intense. Are we talking about like predicting the unpredictable here?
In a way, yeah, kind of. It involves like first identifying any potential hazards, analyzing how likely they actually are to like, happen, how bad could it get if it does happen, and then figuring out ways to like minimize those risks as much as possible.
So it's not just about like reacting to problems when they pop up.
Right.
It's about like getting ahead of them, putting those safeguards in place before something goes wrong.
Yes, exactly.
I'm
And
sorry.
that takes, it takes a special kind of thinking.
Sure.
Being able to just like look at a situation, whether it's, I don't know, a lab setup or a new piece of equipment or whatever, and spot those potential radiation hazards that other people, they might just miss completely.
And that's where those critical thinking skills that RoleCatcher mentions.
Yes.
That's where they come in, right?
100%. A good radiation protection officer, they can't just like follow a checklist.
Right.
They need to be able to like analyze, anticipate, find those solutions, but before those problems actually like become a big deal.
So it's a good thing they're basically required to be experts in critical thinking.
Right.
Per RoleCatcher's whole functions and core abilities section.
It's one of those careers that just like demands a proactive problem-solving mindset.
Yeah.
But of course, even with the best planning in the world, sometimes like things just happen,
Of course.
Things go wrong.
And that's where that whole like enforcing those safety measures part comes in, right?
Yeah.
Having to be the one to be like, hey, you're not following protocol.
Right.
Which I can't imagine is easy all the time.
Yeah, that's where those strong communication skills, they're so important.
Right.
Because it's not about being like a rule enforcer, really. It's about creating this whole like culture of safety.
So it's more about like education and collaboration than just like laying down the law.
Exactly.
Yep.
A radiation protection officer, they might find themselves like developing and then actually delivering training programs for employees, like at all levels.
Oh, wow.
They might even need to like address public concerns or like talk to the media about radiation and like how it works, all that.
So it sounds like this career blends the science with like a surprising amount of, I don't know, public outreach,
Oh, for sure.
education.
It does. A big part of the role is bridging that gap between those like really complex scientific concepts.
Yeah.
And then making sure that like everyone from your colleagues to people in the community, that they get it, they understand how important radiation safety actually is.
Right. It's a
Right.
big responsibility.
Okay, so we've got like the safety blueprints, we've got the risk assessments,
Right.
training, education. What about like the image that just pops into everyone's head when they hear the word radiation, like the monitoring, the Geiger counters, all that? Is that part of it?
Of course. Yeah, monitoring those radiation levels, I mean, that's a really fundamental part of the job.
Okay.
But it's more than just like walking around with a detector.
Yeah.
It's
about collecting that data, analyzing it. Are there any trends, any anomalies, anything weird happening? It's like being a detective, but in the world of, invisible radiation.
So you're like looking for clues,
Yeah.
trying to piece together all this information
Yes,
to really understand like the big picture.
exactly. And because like things can change, right?
Oh, for sure.
Maybe there's new equipment, the procedures change. They need to be able to like adapt their whole monitoring strategies and then make sure that everything still falls within those, those safe limits.
So that takes like a really keen eye for detail
Oh, yeah.
and a super deep understanding of like how radiation even behaves
Totally.
in all these different settings.
Yeah, and that's where their expertise in things like, physics, all those measurement techniques, data analysis, that's where all that stuff really comes into play.
Okay.
But it's not just about like reacting to what's happening right now in the moment.
Right.
This job is also about like having this long-term vision.
Right. What do you mean by that? Long-term vision when it comes to like radiation protection.
Okay, so think about it. Technology, it's always changing.
Always.
Industries are changing, and because of that, the ways that we even like use radiation, the ways we even encounter it, that's changing too.
Okay.
So a good radiation protection officer, they need to like stay ahead of all that, anticipate those future challenges, and maybe even like new opportunities.
So you're not just thinking about today's safety protocols. You're thinking about like what the world of radiation, what's that even going to look like 5, 10, 20 years down the line?
Exactly. They might be involved in like researching new protective materials or like coming up with totally new safety protocols for, these emerging technologies, or even like helping to shape those policy decisions that are going to, kind of guide the future of how we use radiation.
It sounds like a career that's constantly like challenging you to learn and adapt and like think outside the box.
It definitely keeps things interesting.
Okay. So that kind of brings us back to something you were talking about a little bit earlier, the whole like career progression.
Right.
What actually distinguishes someone who's just starting out from like a seasoned radiation protection officer?
Yeah.
It's got to be more than just like years on the job, right?
Yeah. Yeah, so according to RoleCatcher, it's a bunch of things. It's education, of course,
Sure.
but also like experience certifications and something they call demonstrated competence.
Okay, let's break all that down.
Okay, yeah.
Let's start with education. We know that usually like a bachelor's degree in a relevant field,
Yeah,
that's like the starting point.
yeah,
But for those people who are going for like the top spots,
right.
what are we talking about?
As you move into those like more senior roles, a master's degree, maybe even a doctorate,
Okay.
that might be like highly favored, if not like actually required.
Yeah, that makes sense.
The more responsibility you have, the
Yeah.
more you need to know.
For sure. For sure.
But it's not just about the degrees and, all those diplomas and stuff.
Right.
Practical experience, that's like equally important.
Okay, so tell me about the experience side of things.
Yeah.
What kind of experience are we even talking about?
Okay. So it's not even just about like clocking in the hours, right? It's
Okay.
about the type of experience you're getting. So like starting with internships or, entry-level positions, that's a great way to like just get your foot in the door.
Sure, get a foot in the door, get that experience,
Exactly.
seeing how it works in the real world.
Right, exactly. And then like as you move up, you might take on these bigger, more complicated projects. You might
Yeah.
specialize in like a particular area of radiation protection,
Oh.
or you might even get involved in like the research and development side of things.
So your experience, it becomes more specialized as you like climb that ladder.
Exactly. Yeah, it's like you're kind of like narrowing your focus. And this is where those certifications, that's where those can actually like be really helpful.
Okay, the certifications, those little like badges of honor
Right.
that prove like, hey, I know what I'm doing.
Right. And it shows employers like, I'm serious about this.
Exactly.
What are some of the like top certifications in this field, and like how do those actually benefit someone's career?
Yeah, tell me.
Okay, so they're not just for show. I mean, especially in a field like this, it shows that you're committed to like professional development, always learning.
Yeah.
And it can definitely like give you an edge over other people who are applying for the same jobs.
Sure.
RoleCatcher specifically mentions the Certified Health Physicist Certification, the CHP,
Okay.
as like a really, really sought after one.
So it's a signal to employers that like you didn't just do the bare minimum.
Yeah.
You went above and beyond.
Yeah. And there are other ones too, like the Certified Radiation Protection Technologist, the CRPT, that's another one.
Yep.
Or even like certifications that are specific to certain industries.
Oh, okay.
Like, if you're going into medical or industrial radiation safety, there might be very specific ones for those fields.
It seems like professional development's like a never-ending journey in this line of work, huh?
Oh, yeah. Always got to be learning. Always got to stay ahead of the game.
But RoleCatcher also mentioned this whole demonstrated competence thing as like a factor in career progression. What does that even mean, like practically speaking?
Okay, so it's kind of like, walk the walk, don't just talk the talk, right?
Yeah.
You can have all the fancy degrees and like a wall full of certifications, but like, can you actually use all that knowledge
Right.
in those real world situations?
Yeah.
Because that's what employers, they really want to
It's
see.
about proving yourself, right?
Right,
Showing that you can handle the responsibility, make those like split-second decisions,
right.
and, get the job done.
Yeah, but safely,
Safely, efficiently.
efficiently, all that. And that means, sometimes you got to go above and beyond, take some initiative, be a problem solver, and like, honestly, just constantly try to be better.
So this career path, it sounds like it really rewards those go-getters, those people who are like really proactive.
Oh, yeah, 100%.
You're not just clocking in and out. You're like
Yeah.
invested in constantly making radiation safety better.
Exactly.
Okay, I like it. Let's shift gears for a sec. Talk about something that I don't think we've really touched on yet, which is the whole ethics side of things.
Okay, yeah.
Because we're talking about like radiation, right? Which is a powerful force, and like surely there are some ethical considerations that someone in this role has to think about. Does RoleCatcher, do they get into that at all?
It's interesting. They don't really dive into any like specific ethical dilemmas in their materials.
Okay.
It's definitely something that anyone who's like seriously thinking about this as a career, it's something to like really sit down and think about.
Yeah. So let's unpack that a little. What are some of the ethical challenges that a radiation protection officer, what might they actually face on the job?
One of the big ones, and this is like important to remember, radiation itself, it's not inherently good or bad, right? It's
Right.
all about how we're using it.
Right. It can be like a life-saving tool in medicine, or it can be this potential hazard in a power plant.
Exactly. So a radiation protection officer, they might have to like really weigh the benefits of using radiation in a particular way.
Right.
Like, okay, we can use it for this medical imaging, but what are the risks to the patients?
Right. What about the staff?
The staff, exactly. So
It's about finding that balance.
it's this constant balancing act of like, okay, are the benefits actually like outweighing those risks that we're taking?
Which has got to be tough, especially when you're talking about people's health and safety.
Oh, absolutely. And like it really highlights how important it is to have those like ethical reasoning skills.
Yeah, for sure.
A good radiation protection officer, they can't just like look at things from one angle.
Right.
They got to be able to see the whole picture, consider the science, the regulations, but also the impact it's going to have on people, on the environment.
So it's not just about following the rules.
Right.
It's about understanding why those rules exist in the first place,
Exactly.
and then making like really good judgment calls when the
Yeah.
situation calls for it.
Yeah. And sometimes those judgment calls, that might mean like you have to push back against your boss.
Yeah.
Advocate for some safety measure that maybe is going to cost more money, maybe it's going to be inconvenient, but ultimately it's what needs to happen.
So you need like a strong moral compass, I guess,
Yes,
and the courage to like actually speak up when something doesn't feel right.
100%. Integrity is like the name of the game in this field.
Okay, I like it. Last thing, I promise. Future outlook. For all those aspiring radiation protection officers out there, what's it looking like? Is this like a field with some growth potential? What are we talking about?
Based on all that stuff in RoleCatcher's industry trends section, the outlook is actually, it's looking pretty good. I'm not going to lie.
Okay.
They're predicting continued growth in a whole bunch of different industries.
So it's not like some niche thing that's going to disappear next week.
No, not at all. As technology keeps, moving forward, as we find new ways to use radiation, the need for people who, actually know how to do that safely, that's only going to increase.
Right, because it's like, as long as we're using radiation,
Yeah,
we need people who understand it.
100%.
Okay, what about the salary potential?
Okay, so while, like, obviously the specifics, those are going to vary depending on where you are, how much experience you have, your education, all that.
Sure.
RoleCatcher does mention that, like, high salary potential. That's, like, one of the big pros of this career path.
Always nice to hear, right?
Always nice to hear.
It sounds like, that combo of like the job security, that high demand,
Yeah.
competitive salaries, it's making this like a pretty attractive career option, I think, for the right person.
For sure, for the right.
Someone with, skills, the right mindset.
Oh, absolutely. It's a field where you can, make a good living, but at the same time, that the work that you're doing, it's actually having like a real impact on people.
Yeah, and their safety, their well-being, all of that.
That's a powerful combination.
I like it. Well, I think we've covered a lot of ground here.
We really have.
We've gone deep on the whole radiation protection officer thing, from like what you're doing every day to those ethical considerations to even like, what the future holds for this whole field.
It's a career that's definitely not for the faint of heart. There are going to be challenges.
Sure.
But for those people who like love science, they love safety, and they want to know that they're like making a difference in the world, it's hard to beat, honestly.
To our listener, we hope this whole deep dive, it's given you like a clearer picture of what it takes to really make it in this profession. It's demanding,
Oh, yeah.
but ultimately it's rewarding if it's the right thing for you.
100%.
And remember, knowledge is power.
Always.
The more informed you are, the better the decisions you can make for your own future, right?
Absolutely. And never underestimate like how important it is to be curious.
There it is.
Keep asking those questions. Keep exploring. Who knows what you might find?
That's a wrap on another deep dive.
That's a wrap.
Until next time, stay curious.